reactor core was screaming, not with sound. Reactors don't scream. But the bioorganic walls of the fusion chamber
Technician report. What is the cause of these sparks?
Core overload, ma'am. Rerouting power, but it's unstable.
Stabilize it now.
Plasma arcs spiderwebbed across the containment sphere. Each one carved glowing scars into metal that wasn't supposed to scar. 3 minutes until core breach, maybe less. Callan's hands moved across the emergency console, fingers dancing through holographic interfaces that flickered and died as fast as he could summon them. Sweat dripped into his eyes. The temperature in the chamber had climbed past 40 degrees Celsius. His Earth-standard cooling suit was never designed for this. Systems not responding, he muttered into his comm. Repeat manual override failing. I need... The door behind him exploded inward. Not with force. It simply dissolved the living metal of Velshara architecture, responding to a command Callan's implants couldn't interpret. Through the opening stepped a figure that made the emergency lights seem dim by comparison. Queen Seraphine Valkyr stood 2 meters and 3 centimeters tall. Her silver hair caught the plasma glow like captured starlight. Those ears, long and elegant, swept back from her skull in arcs that somehow conveyed both authority and something else. Fear, maybe. Or determination. Her skin held that faint luminescence all her people possessed. Violet undertones that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Right now that rhythm was fast. The containment will fail in 2 minutes and 40 seconds, she said. Her voice carried that dual frequency resonance. The words you heard. The intent you felt in your chest. I know, Callan didn't look away from the console. I'm trying to... There is no mechanical solution. She crossed the chamber in 4 strides. Each footfall left a brief glow on the floor. The core's biological components are cascading. They require neural stabilization. We don't have a neural interface capable of... We do, her hand closed around his wrist. You. Callan finally looked at her. Up close, the alien features were more pronounced. The eyes, slightly larger than human standard, held an iridescent quality. The bone structure of her face followed geometries that were almost human but not quite. Beautiful in a way that made his engineer's brain catalog all the tiny differences. I'm not compatible with Velshara biotech, he said. My neural patterns don't... They will if I bridge them. Her other hand moved to his temple. 2 minutes and 10 seconds, Captain Torin. We link now or the reactor takes half the capital with it. How many people? 300,000 in the immediate radius. Callan Torin had been a fusion engineer for 12 years. Before that, he'd served in the Earth Defense Corps for 8. He understood acceptable losses. He understood calculated risks. He also understood that 300,000 was a number that would follow him into whatever afterlife was waiting. If there was one. Lara's face flashed through his mind. His wife. 5 years gone. She'd always said he thought too much before jumping. Do it, he said. Seraphine's fingers pressed against his temples. Her eyes met his. This close he could see the fine network of silver tracery beneath her skin. Like circuit patterns. Like living art. This will hurt, she said. It did. The universe inverted. That's the only way Callan's mind could process what happened next. Every nerve ending in his body ignited simultaneously. Not with pain exactly. With sensations so intense it transcended the categories his brain had for physical experience. Colors he'd never seen before erupted behind his eyes. Sounds he'd never heard harmonized in impossible chords. And beneath it all, something else. Someone else. Seraphine. Not her body, not her face, but the fundamental architecture of what made her herself. Memories cascaded through the connection like a dam breaking. A child of 13 standing before a throne too large for her. Blood on marble floors. The weight of a crown that felt like execution. Loneliness? God, the loneliness? 14 years of it pressing down like atmosphere on a planet with too much gravity. Focus, her voice cut through the cast, but it wasn't her voice anymore. It was inside his head. The core, feel it. And somehow impossibly he did. The reactor's bioorganic components spread out before his awareness like a 3-dimensional schematic. But this wasn't data. This was sensation. He could feel each containment cell like they were extensions of his own nervous system. The cascade failure mapped itself across his consciousness. There. Seraphine's thought merged with his. The tertiary stabilizers, if we synchronize... Callan didn't need her to finish. He already understood. Their combined neural patterns, human and Velshara, created a frequency that could resonate with the reactor's biological matrix. He reached out not with his hands, but with something deeper. The plasma arcs began to slow. Seraphine's presence in his mind intensified. He felt her surprise, felt her recognition that this shouldn't be working. Human neural architecture wasn't compatible with Velshara biotechnology. Every simulation said so, every test case had failed. But simulations didn't account for desperation, or for two minds that somehow against every probability found harmony in the spaces between species. The reactor stabilized. The crimson glow faded to amber, then to the steady green gold of normal operation. The temperature began to drop. Callan's readouts, the ones that hadn't fried, started showing nominal levels across the board. Seraphine's hands remained on his temples. Her eyes, those impossible iridescent eyes, were wide. We did it, Callan said. His voice sounded wrong, distant. Yes. Her thought came first, then her words a fraction of a second later. But something else happened. He felt it too. The connection between them should have dissolved the moment the crisis passed. Neural bridges were temporary by design. The biological safeguards built into Velshara technology ensured it. But the link remained, faint now, a thread instead of a flood, but present, undeniable, persistent. That's impossible, Callan said. Agreed. Seraphine's hands fell away from his face, but the connection didn't break. We should report to the medical... The world tilted. Callan's knees hit the floor. The neural feedback, the adrenaline crash, the sheer impossibility of what they'd just done had all hit him at once. Seraphine caught him before his head cracked against the console. Her strength surprised him. Those slender arms held his full weight without strain. Easy, she said, aloud this time. The link destabilization causes temporary... Darkness took him. When Callan woke in the medical bay, they told him he'd been unconscious for 6 hours. They told him the reactor was stable. They told him he'd saved 300,000 lives. They didn't tell him about the neural link. Not then, because they didn't know yet. Neither did he. The thread of connection had gone quiet enough to mistake for phantom sensation, for the neural equivalent of ringing in your ears. It took 3 weeks before the medical scans confirmed what Seraphine had already known. Their neural patterns had imprinted on each other, permanently. That had been 6 months ago. The hangar bay of the Royal Spaceport stretched out before Callan like a cathedral built by a civilization that understood acoustics on a molecular level. Every surface curved, every angle calculated to carry sound and light in patterns that felt almost musical. The walls glowed with that soft bioluminescence that characterized all Velshara architecture. Violet veins of living circuitry traced slow waves through the organic metal. The structure responded to presence to intent to the unconscious rhythms of anyone who entered. Right now, the patterns were calm. Gentle, the hangar was saying goodbye. Callan stood at the base of the transport shuttle's loading ramp, a compact bag slung over one shoulder. Everything he'd brought to Velshara 12 months ago fit in there. Everything except the ceramic cup he'd forgotten in his quarters. The one the fabricator had printed with a slight glow along the rim because he'd spilled reactor coolant near the console his second week here. Stupid thing to regret. But regret was easier than thinking about what leaving actually meant. The mission was complete. Perfect completion by every metric Earth Command cared about. The defensive pact with Velshara was signed, sealed, and ratified by both the Imperial Council and the United Earth Assembly. Technology sharing agreements in place, cultural exchange programs established, military coordination protocols drafted and tested. Perma, Kalantoran fusion engineer turned emergency diplomat, had done what he'd been sent to do. Against all predictions, he'd made it work. The Krell Empire's expansion had forced Earth's hand. Humanity needed allies. The Velshara needed trading partners and someone who understood the fusion technology that powered their bioorganic infrastructure. It was practical. Logical. A marriage of necessity between two species that had nothing in common except the desire to survive. 12 months. 367 days, actually. Velshara's rotation was slightly longer than Earth's. He'd counted every one. The shuttle's engines began their warm-up sequence. A low hum that he felt in his bones. Earth standard drives. Familiar. The sound of going home. Home to gravity that didn't pulse with violet light. To air that didn't carry harmonics his implants couldn't quite translate. To people who didn't have ears that could pivot like antennae tracking sound and intent with equal precision. To loneliness that was at least familiar. Callan closed his eyes. The neural link, that thread that had connected him to Seraphine for 6 months, hummed faintly in the back of his mind. It had become background noise. Like tinnitus, you learn to ignore it. Except when it spiked. Like now. The hangar's bioluminescence dimmed. Not malfunction. Recognition. The living architecture responding to a presence that outranked everyone else in the capital. Callan didn't turn. Not immediately. He knew who it was. The connection told him. And beneath that, something more primitive. The way the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Footsteps. Measured. Unhurried. Each one carrying weight that had nothing to do with mass. Captain Torin! Her voice filled the hangar without echoing. That dual-frequency resonance that bypassed his ears and went straight to his spine. He turned. Queen Seraphine Valkyr stood at the threshold where the corridor met the hangar floor, backlit by the violet glow of the palace proper. She wore formal attire today, ceremonial robes that somehow enhanced her alien features rather than hiding them. Silver thread traced patterns across dark fabric, patterns that matched the circuit tracery beneath her skin. Her ears angled slightly backward. Concentration, Callan had learned, or uncertainty. With Seraphine, it was often both. Your Majesty. He kept his voice neutral, professional, the same tone he'd used in every council meeting for 12 months. She moved forward. Each step left brief luminescence on the floor. The hangar seemed to brighten around her, not just the biolights, everything. as if her presence commanded photons the way she commanded her people. You did not attend the final ceremony, she said. I sent my regrets, prior commitment to pack. You have one bag. I'm efficient. One ear flicked. The Velshara equivalent of a raised eyebrow. Skepticism delivered without words. The shuttle's engine cycled higher, 5 minutes to launch window. I believed, Seraphine said, and something in her voice made him look at her more carefully, that we would conclude our association with deliberate clarity. We signed the papers, shook hands. Well, I shook hands. You did that thing with your palm against mine. Close enough. That was ceremony, public performance. What else is there? She stopped 3 paces away, close enough that he could see the way the silver threads in her hair caught the light, close enough that the connection between them strengthened from background hum to active presence, close enough that he could see her breathing was slightly faster than diplomatic protocols required. Our neural resonance has not dissipated, Seraphine said. The words hung in the air between them, clinical, precise, terrifying. Callan forced himself to breathe normally. The synchronization was 6 months ago, emergency protocol. The doctor said it would fade. It has not faded. Residual patterns, neural echoes, it'll... Captain Torin. Her voice cut through his rationalization like a blade through water. I am not speaking of echoes. The link remains active. It has in fact strengthened. The shuttle's countdown chimed in his peripheral implant. 4 minutes. Callan's engineering training kicked in. When faced with impossible data, verify the instruments. You've had scans. Continuous monitoring since the incident. She gestured and a hologram bloomed between them. Medical data, neural mapping. 2 distinct patterns, human and Velshara, with threads of connection woven between them like roots finding each other in dark soil. The threads were glowing, active, growing. That's not possible, Callan said. Human neural architecture isn't compatible with Velshara biosystems. Every test case failed. Yes, except ours. Her gaze held his. Our cognitive patterns aligned beyond anticipated thresholds. The medical council estimates that within 60 days of complete separation, we will both begin to experience severe neurological deterioration. The hangar seemed very quiet suddenly. Even the shuttle's engines faded to distant white noise. Define severe, Callan said. Cognitive dissonance, memory fragmentation, loss of motor control. She paused. The deterioration accelerates once it begins. Estimated timeline to complete neural collapse is 14 days after initial symptoms manifest. You're saying if I leave, we both die. I am saying that separation carries significant risk. How significant? Her ears lowered slightly. Not anger, something worse. Sadness. 87% probability of permanent damage. 63% probability of death. Callan's hands had gone numb. He flexed them, forcing blood back into his fingers. Engineering mind calculating, analyzing, looking for the error in the data. There wasn't one. How long have you known, he asked. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And you're telling me now, with 5 minutes until my ship leaves, I believed you deserved the choice. Her voice was quiet. To leave knowing the consequences or to stay knowing the cost. The cost of what being trapped here being... He stopped. The connection carried something from her side. Not words. Emotion, pain. I am not trapping you, Seraphine said. I am informing you of a biological reality neither of us chose. The shuttle's engines reached peak cycle. 3 minutes. Callan looked at the ramp. Looked at the woman standing before him. Alien. Powerful. Terrifying in ways that had nothing to do with political authority. There has to be a solution, he said. Medical intervention. Surgical separation of the neural pathways. Attempted in simulation, 94% fatality rate. Chemical suppression. Temporary at best. The bond reasserts within 72 hours. What about... His implant chimed. Incoming transmission, priority encryption, Earth command. Callan's blood went cold. Receive, he subvocalized. The message unfolded across his visual overlay. Text only. No voice, no video. Just words that might as well have been carved in stone. Priority Alpha. Eyes only. To Captain Callan Torin, from Earth Defense Command Diplomatic Corps. Re-immediate extraction. Captain Torin intelligence reports indicate possible compromise of your neural integrity via alien biotechnology. Senator Arcturus Voss has formally requested your immediate return for medical evaluation and debriefing. Commander Draven will arrive at Velshara in 14 days with extraction team. You are ordered to board the scheduled transport and return to Earth immediately. Failure to comply will result in court-martial proceedings under Article 47 unauthorized fraternization with hostile biological systems. This is not a request. End transmission. The hangar spun. Or maybe that was just Callan's inner ear trying to process the fact that his own government thought he'd been compromised, that they were sending an extraction team, that he had 14 days before this stopped being a diplomatic mission and became a hostage situation. Captain... Seraphine's voice cut through the static in his head. He looked at her. At those iridescent eyes, at the ears that were now angled forward, alert to his distress even without the neural link spelling it out. Earth knows, he said, about the resonance. How Voss. The name tasted like ash. Senator Arcturus Voss. Hardliner. Anti-alien conservative who'd opposed the Velshara alliance from the beginning. He's been monitoring my medical data. Probably has people in the diplomatic corps feeding him information. What are his intentions? He thinks you compromised me. Contaminated me with alien biotech. Callan's laugh was bitter. He's sending an extraction team. I have 14 days to get home or I'm declared a deserter. The shuttle's engines hit final ignition sequence. 2 minutes. Seraphine's expression didn't change, but the bond between them carried something complex. Anger, fear, determination. Then you must go, she said. If I go, we both start dying. If you stay, your people brand you traitor. If I leave, 300,000 Velshara lose their lives when the next reactor crisis hits, and there's no one to bridge the neural gap. Her ears swept back. Surprise? You cannot possibly believe you are essential to... I've run the simulations. Your people's biotech is incredible, but it's also fragile. You need someone who understands fusion mechanics at a fundamental level. Someone who can interface with your systems. He met her eyes. You need me. Even if the Neuralink wasn't killing us both, you need me. That is presumptuous. That's true. Silence fell between them. The shuttle's countdown reached final sequence, 90 seconds. Captain Torin, Seraphine said, and for the first time since he'd known her, she sounded uncertain. I cannot ask you to sacrifice your honor, your career, your freedom. You're not asking, I'm choosing. To stay. Callan looked at the shuttle one last time. Thought about Earth. About Lyra's grave in the colony cemetery on Mars. About the life he'd built, the career he'd earned, the reputation that was about to become synonymous with traitor. He thought about 300,000 lives. About neural patterns that were somehow more compatible across species than anyone had dreamed possible. About a bond that refused to break, even when common sense screamed that it should. He thought about Lyra's last words. Promise me you'll keep living, Cal. Promise me you won't stop. He'd kept that promise for 5 years. Maybe it was time to keep it in a different way. I need to send a message, he said. Seraphine nodded. The hangar's biosystems responded to her intent. A communication interface bloomed in the air before him. Callan composed the transmission carefully, each word chosen with precision. To Earth Defense Command, from Captain Callan Torin. Remission extension request. Request temporary extension of mission parameters due to emergent cross-species research variables. Neural synchronization achieved during reactor crisis has created unprecedented opportunity for biological cooperation between human and Velshara systems. Recommend continued study under controlled conditions. Will comply with extraction order if denied. Awaiting response. Torin out. He sent it. The words disappeared into the void between stars. Behind him, the shuttle's engines began to power down. The pilot had received notification. Passenger manifest changed. Launch aborted. The hangar's bioluminescence shifted. From farewell blue to something warmer. Welcome, maybe. Or hope. Seraphine's ears lifted fully. Not quite a smile. Her species didn't smile like humans did. But the connection carried something that felt like relief. You choose to remain, she said. I choose to investigate. Callan shouldered his bag. Research. Purely scientific. 14 days to figure out if this neural link is a death sentence or something else. And if Earth denies your request, then I board Commander Draven's ship in 2 weeks and we both start the clock on the neural deterioration. He met her eyes. But maybe in 14 days we find something. A treatment, a suppression protocol. Something that lets us survive this without either of us having to sacrifice everything. That is optimistic. That's human. Her expression shifted. Something that might have been amusement or respect. The bond made it hard to tell which. Maybe both. Very well, Captain Torin. She turned toward the hangar exit. Then let us begin our research. As the hangar lights shifted from blue to violet to the warm gold of active operation, Callan realized his mission hadn't ended. It had just changed definition. And somewhere between Earth and this alien world, between duty and something he didn't have words for yet, he'd made a choice that would either save 2 species or destroy one man. 14 days to find out which. The clock started now. The Royal Biosynaptic Laboratory occupied the lowest level of the palace, 300 meters below the throne room carved into living rock that the Velshara had shaped over centuries. The walls here didn't just glow, they breathed. Callan stood barefoot on a circular platform in the center of the chamber, watching translucent strands of biocircuitry coil up from the floor like curious serpents. They hovered around his head, patient, waiting for permission to make contact. I'd like to clarify something, he said, eyeing one strand that pulsed with violet light. On Earth, when someone says they want to study your brain, we usually insist on dinner first. Across from him, Seraphine stood on an identical platform. The chamber curved upward like the inside of a shell. Bioluminescent veins traced spirals toward a distant apex. Her silver hair had been pulled back today, revealing the full, elegant sweep of her ears. You have already consumed sufficient stimulants, she replied. Your bloodstream contains enough caffeine to power a small reconnaissance drone. That's not comforting. It was not intended to be. Around them, Imperial scientists observed through a translucent membrane that shimmered like heat rising from summer asphalt. Their species didn't whisper. They resonated. Low harmonic tones vibrated through the chamber, curiosity mixed with professional anxiety. The sound of people watching an experiment that could either revolutionize biology or kill both test subjects. Callan had spent 3 days designing this protocol. 3 days of arguing with Velshara medical experts who thought human neural architecture was too primitive to properly interface with their technology. 3 days of proving them wrong with equations and simulations, and the simple fact that he and Seraphine were still alive when every model said they shouldn't be. The connection between them hummed in the back of his mind. Constant now, like a second heartbeat you couldn't ignore. "This procedure is non-invasive," Seraphine said. Her voice carried that dual frequency resonance that made his chest vibrate. "You said that about the reactor. That situation was different. We were preventing a catastrophic explosion." "Details." A tendril of light extended from her platform. It paused near his temple. Callan resisted the instinct to swat it away. 5 years in the Defense Corps had trained him to stay still under fire. This was just a different kind of battlefield. "Our neural patterns remain partially synchronized," Seraphine continued. "Clinical, precise. We must map the overlap to understand its structure." "I prefer the word overlap," Callan said. "Sounds less romantic, therefore less politically explosive." Her lips curved, barely. "You continue to classify this as a diplomatic hazard." "Everything is a diplomatic hazard when you're me." The tendril made contact. Cool sensations slid across his scalp. Not painful, but intimate in a way that made his skin prickle. Across the chamber, Seraphine's platform brightened in response. The biocircuitry recognized the connection, welcomed it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world shifted. Not physically. The chamber remained. The scientists remained. But a second layer unfolded beneath perception. An undercurrent of awareness that didn't belong solely to him. Color intensified. The violet veins along the walls seemed to hum in a rhythm he suddenly understood. His heartbeat, once private and mundane, echoed in counterpoint to another pulse. Steady, controlled, unmistakably hers. Callan inhaled sharply. "You feel it." Seraphine's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "If by it you mean the sudden realization that my thoughts aren't entirely solitary." He swallowed, then yes. The scientist's harmonics rose in pitch. Excitement, or alarm, hard to tell. The synchronization deepened. Images flickered. Not visual hallucinations, impressions. Memory fragments that didn't belong to him but somehow felt familiar. A throne room, empty except for a child standing before a seat too large for her frame. Blood on white marble. The weight of a crown that felt like an execution sentence. They killed her parents in front of the court. Made it look like an accident. Political necessity, they called it. She was 13. The memory wasn't his. But he felt it like it was. Felt the loneliness that had followed. 14 years of ruling alone. 14 years of understanding that every person in her orbit wanted something from her. Power, favor, genetic compatibility for political marriages she'd refused. No one had ever asked what she wanted, until a human engineer had stumbled into her reactor core and saved 300,000 lives without expecting anything in return. Callan's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "For what?" Her voice was quiet in his mind. "For what they did to you." A pause. Then warmth rippled through the bond. Not heat, emotion, gratitude mixed with surprise. "You were not responsible," Seraphine said. "No, but someone should say it." The tendril brightened. The bond stabilized into something structured, deliberate. Callan could sense the architecture of her cognition now. Layered, harmonic, non-linear. Where his thoughts moved in sequential bursts, hers unfolded in simultaneous patterns, like chords instead of melody. It was extraordinary. It was also terrifying. "I can feel how your mind works," he said. "And I yours. Your species processes reality in straight lines, cause and effect, action and consequence. It's remarkably efficient. Your species thinks in 3 dimensions at once. No wonder you build cities that make my brain hurt." A flicker of amusement crossed the link. Hers, not his. The sensation was distinct, like a brush of warm air. One of the scientists stepped forward beyond the membrane. Its elongated form shimmered faintly as it extended a crystalline instrument. Light projected between the platforms. A lattice formed, geometric patterns mapping the neural overlap between human and Velshara. Callan stared at it. The threads connecting their minds wove together in intricate complexity, growing, adapting, alive. "That looks permanent," he said. "It is not permanent, it is adaptive." On Earth, that word usually precedes disaster. She almost laughed. The sensation of it rippled through the link before the sound formed. Real laughter, unguarded. The lattice pulsed brighter. Then something unexpected occurred. A memory surfaced. Not from the reactor, not from Crisis. From a quiet evening 3 weeks ago when they'd stood on the upper terrace of the palace. She'd been explaining her people's perception of time as harmonic strata. He'd been attempting to explain why humans tell jokes at funerals. You equate humor with resilience, she'd said. And you equate solemnity with strength, he'd replied. Both are necessary. Agreed, but only one makes life bearable. Now that exchange replayed across the shared field with startling clarity. Every nuance, every unspoken meaning. The way she'd looked at him when he'd made her laugh, the way he'd felt something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with grief for the first time in 5 years. You accessed that deliberately, Seraphine said. No, it just surfaced. Your emotional weighting of the memory triggered amplification. Callan forced himself to focus. Engineer mind analyzing data. So the link prioritizes emotionally significant moments. It would appear so. That's going to be inconvenient. Agreed. The bond tightened. Not painful, insistent. Like gravity increasing. One of the scientists emitted a sharp harmonic, warning. The lattice flickered, unstable. Callan's training kicked in. When a system destabilizes, you don't fight it, you guide it. He exhaled slowly, deliberately relaxing muscles he hadn't realized were clenched. Across the link he felt Seraphine mirror the action. Their breathing synchronized. Heartbeats found rhythm. The lattice stabilized. Partial voluntary regulation achieved, Seraphine said. There was something in her voice. Pride, maybe. That sounds promising. It is unprecedented. Less comforting. She stepped down from her platform. Graceful despite the height. Callan followed. His legs were unsteady but functional. The neural feedback left him feeling like he'd run a marathon while solving differential equations. The lead scientist approached. Its voice resonated through a translation node. The synchronization has evolved beyond residual imprint. It is self-sustaining. Callan grimaced. You make that sound like a fungal infection. It is adaptive, the scientist repeated, as if that explained everything. Seraphine's hand touched his elbow, steadying. The physical contact sent a pulse through the bond. Warmth, concern, something else he didn't have words for. This bond will not dissolve through avoidance, she said quietly. It requires integration. And integration means choice. Yes? They stood in the luminous chamber, scientists pretending not to observe the subtext. The air thick with implications neither of them wanted to name. Callan's implant chimed. Message notification. He accessed it with a thought. It was from Earth. Response to his extension request. His blood went cold. Extension denied. Senator Voss has escalated concerns to Defense Council. Timeline accelerated. Commander Draven departs for Velshara in 11 days. Comply with extraction or face court-martial. This is your final warning. 11 days, not 14. They'd move the timeline up. Captain... Seraphine's voice cut through the static in his head. He showed her the message. Watched her ears lower. Not fear, calculation. They are forcing your hand, she said. Voss doesn't trust aliens. Never has. He sees this neural link as contamination. Proof that your people are trying to control Earth's diplomatic corps. That is absurd. That's politics. Callan ran a hand through his hair. He's probably been monitoring my biometric data since day one. Waiting for something like this. Now he has ammunition. What will you do? Good question. Callan looked around the laboratory. At the scientists who'd spent 3 days helping him understand an impossible bond. At the biocircuitry that had mapped his mind with gentleness he hadn't expected. At Seraphine, who stood close enough that he could see the silver tracery beneath her skin. At the connection between them that refused to break no matter how many people wanted it to. I keep researching, he said. 11 days is still 11 days. We find a way to stabilize the link. Prove it's not contamination. Send Earth irrefutable data that this is biological synchronization, not mind control. And if they do not believe the data, then I board Draven's ship and we both start dying. He met her eyes. But I don't plan on dying. The Imperial Council chamber was designed to make visitors feel small. It succeeded. The vaulted ceiling rose 30 meters overhead. Bioluminescent strands spiraled upward in slow contemplative motion. Council members arranged themselves in concentric arcs, 12 of them, each representing a major house of the Velshara nobility. Callan stood beside Seraphine's throne, occupying a position that technically didn't exist in Imperial protocol. Observer, advisor, research partner. The exact title remained deliberately vague. It kept people guessing. In diplomacy, ambiguity was sometimes safer than clarity. The topic today was routine, expansion of shared research corridors, mutual defense disclaimers, the usual careful dance of interstellar cooperation between species that still didn't entirely trust each other. Councillor Vexrin sat in the outer arc, elderly by Velshara standards. His ears had grayed at the tips. His skin's luminescence had faded to dull amber, but his eyes were sharp, and his voice when he spoke carried the weight of old money and older grudges. The human presence disturbs the natural order, Vexrin said, not looking at Callan, speaking about him like he wasn't there. We have survived 14,000 years without requiring alien guidance. We have also, Seraphine replied evenly, never faced a threat like the Krell Empire. Adaptation is survival. Adaptation is one thing, contamination's another. The word hung in the air. Contamination. The same word Voss had used in his message. Callan kept his expression neutral. Years of defense course training. Never show weakness, never give ammunition to people looking for reasons to dismiss you. But the bond carried something from Seraphine's side. Anger. Controlled. Banked like coals waiting for oxygen. "Explain your concern, counselor," she said. Her voice was ice wrapped in silk. Vexrin gestured. A hologram bloomed above the council floor. Medical data? Neural scans. The lattice pattern from this morning's laboratory session. Callan's lattice. His neural signature intertwined with Seraphine's. "The human has integrated himself into your Majesty's biological systems," Vexrin said. "This is not cooperation. This is parasitism." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Other counselors leaning forward, interested now. "The neural synchronization was necessary to prevent reactor failure," Seraphine said. "Captain Torrin saved 300,000 lives, and in doing so compromised our Queen's neural integrity. We have no way to know the extent of his influence. For all we know, his thoughts have already become yours, his goals your commands. That is speculation without evidence." "Is it?" Vexrin stood. His formal robes caught the light. "Then explain why you extended his mission, why you granted him access to our most sensitive research facilities, why he stands beside your throne in a position reserved for consorts and blood heirs." The chamber went very quiet. Callan felt the bond spike. Seraphine's fury rising like a tide. He touched her arm, gentle, a reminder. "Stay calm, don't let him provoke you." She didn't look at him, but the fury banked, controlled. "Captain Torrin's expertise is necessary for ongoing fusion research," she said. "His presence is practical, nothing more." "Then you would not object to his immediate departure." "I would object to wasting valuable intellectual resources on political theater." Vexrin smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Of course. Forgive my concern, Your Majesty. I merely wish to ensure the imperial bloodline remains pure, that our civilization does not succumb to foreign influence." The word pure landed like a weapon. Callan had heard it before. Different language. Same meaning. Purity doctrine. Species supremacy. The idea that mixing with aliens diluted something essential. It was garbage on Earth. It was garbage here. But garbage wrapped in formal language could still destroy careers, end alliances, start wars. "We will take a brief recess," Seraphine said. Her voice carried command that made the bioluminescent walls pulse brighter. "Reconvene in 1 hour." The counselors rose. Most filed out in respectful silence. Vexrin lingered, his eyes on Callan, measuring, calculating. Then he left. The chamber emptied. Only Seraphine and Callan remained, and the guards at the perimeter, always the guards. "He knows about the neural link," Callan said quietly. "Obviously. How the medical data was supposed to be classified. Someone is feeding him information, someone close to the research team." Seraphine turned to face him. Her ears swept back. Frustration mixed with something darker, fear. "Vexrin will use this against us, against you. He will claim you compromised me, that the alliance is built on neural manipulation. Can we prove it's not? Can you prove a negative?" "Point taken." Callan looked at the throne. Massive. Carved from living crystal that shifted color with the light. A seat built for someone larger than life. Seraphine fit it perfectly, but he could still see the 13-year-old girl standing before it. Alone, terrified. "What do you want?" he asked. She blinked. "What? 14 years of people wanting things from you. Power, status, political favor. What do you want?" Silence stretched between them. The bond hummed. He felt her uncertainty, her surprise that anyone had asked. "I want," she said slowly, "to not be alone." The words were quiet, almost too quiet to hear. But Callan heard them, felt them through the connection that bound them together. He thought about Lyra, about 5 years of loneliness that looked different from Seraphine's but felt remarkably similar, about the weight of grief that made every day feel like walking through water, about the way that weight had gotten lighter over the past 6 months without him noticing. "You're not alone," he said. "How can you say that your people want you to leave? Mine want you gone. We are both isolated by forces beyond our control." "Maybe, but we're isolated together." Her ears lifted slightly, a small movement, but significant. Before she could respond, the chamber doors exploded inward, not with force, with light. Plasma weapons lit up the space like lightning Mazo, and guards screamed. Some fell, others scrambled for cover. Callan's training took over. He moved without thinking, grabbed Seraphine, pulled her behind the throne's crystal mass. "Stay down," he ordered. "This is my palace, and you're the target. Stay down." More plasma fire. Callan risked a glance around the throne's edge, saw figures in dark armor, not palace security. These were professional. Military-grade weapons, coordinated movement, assassination team, and leading them directing fire with hand signals was Vexrin. The counselor's formal robes were gone, replaced with tactical gear. In his hand a plasma rifle that should not have existed inside the palace. "Your Majesty," Vexrin called out, his voice amplified somehow. "It need not end in violence. Surrender the human. Let us purge the contamination peacefully. Seraphine's hand found Callan's, squeezed. The bond flared to life. Not passive now, active, urgent. And in that moment, Callan felt something extraordinary happen. Their minds synchronized. Not like the laboratory. This was combat synchronization. His tactical training, her precognitive sensing. Two species' strengths merging into something neither possessed alone. He saw the battlefield through her awareness, felt the positions of every hostile, knew where they would move before they moved. She felt his combat analysis. The vectors, the angles, the way to turn superior numbers into a disadvantage. Together they understood. Can you shield? Callan asked through the bond and aloud simultaneously. Yes, but I need focus. I'll give you 3 seconds. That is insufficient. Trust me. He felt her decision through the link. Trust given. Accepted. Callan moved. 3 seconds. That's all he needed. He broke from cover. Drew the sidearm he'd carried since his Defense Corps days. Fired 3 shots, not at the armored figures, at the chamber's bioluminescent control nodes. The walls responded. Velshara architecture wasn't just aesthetic, it was functional. The palace's biosystems registered threat, registered authorized override from their queen. The floor became a weapon. Tendrils of living metal erupted beneath the assassin's feet. Not killing, restraining. Seraphine's control absolute even under fire. The armored figures fell, weapons scattered, all except Vexrin. The old counselor was fast, faster than age suggested. He rolled clear, brought his rifle up, aimed at Seraphine. Callan didn't think, didn't analyze, he just moved. Put himself between the weapon and her. The plasma bolt hit him square in the chest. Should have killed him. Would have if not for the neural link. In that fraction of a second, Seraphine pushed her bioelectric capabilities through their connection. Her species' natural shielding extended, wrapped around him like invisible armor. The plasma dissipated, most of it. Enough. Callan felt the impact, felt his chest seize, but he stayed standing, long enough to fire once. The shot took Vexrin in the shoulder, non-lethal, precise. The old counselor dropped his weapon, collapsed. Palace guards poured into the chamber, real guards this time. Loyal ones, they secured the assassins, secured Vexrin. Callan's legs gave out. Seraphine caught him, her strength surprising. Those slender arms held his full weight without strain. You fool, she whispered. You absolute fool, you could have died. So could you. I am trained for this, you are an engineer. I'm a lot of things. Callan's chest hurt, burned, but he was breathing, alive. Engineer, diplomat, apparently now bodyguard. Medical teams arrived, started scanning, started treating, but Callan barely felt it. The bond thrummed between them, steady, strong, alive. Seraphine's face was close to his, those iridescent eyes studying him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Why, she asked. Why protect me? Because 300,000 people need you alive. Because 2 civilizations need this alliance. Because what? Callan met her eyes, felt the truth through the connection before he could voice it. Because I'm tired of being alone too. Her ears swept forward, her breath caught. And for just a moment in a throne room full of guards and medical teams and political chaos, they were the only 2 people in the universe. In the interrogation chamber deep beneath the palace, Vexrin talked. Not immediately. The old counselor had survived 14,000 years of political intrigue by knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. But plasma burns have a way of making even the most stubborn people reconsider their loyalties, especially when those burns came from palace security rather than enemy fire. Callan watched through a one-way membrane. Seraphine stood beside him. Her medical team had insisted on bed rest. She'd ignored them. Some things were more important than protocol. He claims Earth's Senator Voss contacted him 8 months ago, one of the interrogators reported. Its harmonic tones carried through translation nodes promised significant financial backing, enough to fund a complete restructuring of the Imperial Council. In exchange for what? Seraphine asked. Your death. Captain Torrens' capture. Proof that humans cannot be trusted. Callan felt his hands clench. The bond carried Seraphine's fury alongside his own, a shared emotion that made it twice as potent. Voss was trying to start a war, he said, or destroy an alliance that threatened his political position. Seraphine's voice was cold, clinical, the voice of a queen who'd learned to separate emotion from necessity. He failed, but others will try. Then we need proof, something Earth Command can't ignore. The interrogator's harmonic shifted. Uncertainty. There is more. Vexrin claims he provided Senator Voss with classified Velshara defensive protocols, military positioning, reactor vulnerabilities. In return, Voss supplied him with Earth-manufactured weapons and tactical intelligence. That's treason, Callan said, on both sides. Yes, and it suggests a larger conspiracy. Seraphine turned to face him. Voss could not have acted alone. He would need allies in Earth's military, access to classified armaments, someone high in your command structure. Callan's tactical mind was already working through possibilities. Chain of command, clearance levels. Who had access to what? The list was shorter than it should be. We need to tell Draven, he said. When he arrives, we show him everything. The assassination attempt, Vexren's confession, the weapons trafficking. If Voss has co-conspirators, Draven can root them out. And if Draven is one of them, he's not. I served with him. Draven's a lot of things, but traitor isn't one of them. You're certain as I can be about anything these days. The interrogation continued. Vexren spilled details, names, dates, financial transactions that painted a picture of corruption spanning both civilizations. It was damning, thorough, everything they needed to expose the conspiracy. It was also everything Voss would kill to keep secret. The medical bay's monitoring equipment had been tracking Callan and Seraphine's vital signs continuously for 6 days. Neural patterns, cardiac rhythms, hormone levels, every biological marker the Velshara physicians could measure. The data was concerning. The bond is destabilizing, the head physician said. Its elongated form hovered over holographic displays showing neural degradation in real time. The stress from the assassination attempt accelerated the timeline. You have perhaps 5 days before deterioration becomes irreversible. 5 days, not 11, not 14, 5. Callan looked at the displays, saw his own neural pattern fragmenting at the edges, saw Seraphine's showing similar decay, like two structures built to support each other suddenly being pulled apart by opposing forces. What are our options? Seraphine asked. Her voice was steady, but through the bond Callan felt her fear. Complete integration, full neural merger, or complete separation with 94% fatality rate. Those are the only choices. Unless you discover a third option in the next 120 hours. Silence fell in the medical bay. Equipment hummed. Monitors beeped. The sound of time running out. Callan thought about Lara, about the promise he'd made, about 5 years of living that had felt more like surviving. He thought about the last 6 months, about arguments over fusion theory and debates about leadership philosophy, about terrace conversations under triple moons and laboratory sessions mapping impossible connections, about standing between a plasma rifle and someone who'd become more important than protocol allowed. Complete integration, he said quietly. What does that actually mean? The physician's harmonics shifted. Uncertainty mixed with professional curiosity. Your neural patterns would merge beyond current levels. Thoughts would become partially shared. Emotions would resonate continuously. You would in essence become a hybrid consciousness, two minds operating as one system. That sounds like losing ourselves. Or finding something new. We have no precedent, no data. This would be evolutionary biology, in real time. Seraphine's hand found his. The bond carried her question before she voiced it. Is that what you want? She asked. I don't know. Is it what you want? I want to survive, but not at the cost of who we are. Then we find the third option. In 5 days, we've done harder things. The physician made a sound that might have been skepticism. Captain Torin, I admire your optimism, but biology does not negotiate. Either you integrate or you separate. There is no middle ground. Callan looked at the neural displays, at the patterns that showed two distinct minds trying desperately to stay connected across a gap that shouldn't exist. And something clicked in his engineer's brain. You're wrong, he said slowly. There is a middle ground, we just have to build it. Explain. The bond is destabilizing because we're fighting it, trying to maintain complete separation while also maintaining connection. It's like trying to keep two magnets apart while they're pulling together. The energy required increases until the system fails. Your point. What if we don't fight it? What if we let the integration happen but controlled managed? Like building a bridge instead of letting two landmasses collide. The physician's harmonics rose. Interest. You propose regulated neural merger, allowing connection to strengthen while maintaining individual cognitive architecture. Exactly, we create a shared space, a neural bridge where our thoughts can meet, but we keep our core identities separate. That has never been attempted. Neither has a human Velshara neural bond. We're making this up as we go anyway. Seraphine studied him. Through the bond, he felt her analytical mind processing the possibility, testing it against what they knew, what they'd experienced. It could work, she said, if we can establish clear boundaries, designated areas of overlap versus privacy. Like rooms in a house, some shared, some private. A crude metaphor, but accurate. The physician cycled through data. This would require extensive neural mapping, precise calibration. Any error could result in complete merger or catastrophic rejection. Then we don't make errors, Callan said. And if Commander Draven arrives before the procedure is complete, then we explain that we're in the middle of saving both our lives and he can wait 5 damn days. The physician made that skeptical sound again, but it was already pulling up procedural protocols, already calculating calibration requirements. Because impossible or not, it was the only chance they had. The next 4 days blurred together in a haze of neural mapping and calibration sessions. Callan and Seraphine spent 18 hours a day in the laboratory, letting the biocircuitry probe deeper, establishing boundaries, creating the architecture for their neural bridge. It was exhausting, intimate, terrifying. By day 3, Callan could feel Seraphine's presence in his mind like a constant companion. Not intrusive, but there. A warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. By day 4, they'd established the framework. A shared cognitive space where they could meet, communicate, coordinate. But beyond that space, their minds remained their own. It wasn't perfect, the boundaries were fragile, but it was holding. On the 5th day, Commander Draven arrived. The extraction team's shuttle touched down in the royal hangar with military precision. No warning, no ceremony. Just 6 soldiers in full combat gear and one very tired-looking commander who'd crossed half the galaxy on orders he probably didn't agree with. Callan was waiting. He stood at the base of the shuttle's ramp, hands clasped behind his back. Defense Corps posture, old habits. Seraphine stood beside him. Not behind, not in front, beside. A queen in her own palace, but also a partner in something that transcended protocol. Commander Draven descended the ramp. Tall, weathered, the kind of face that had seen too many deployments and not enough home leave. His eyes swept the hangar, cataloging details. Exits, security positions, tactical assessment as natural as breathing. When his gaze settled on Callan, something shifted. Recognition, perhaps respect. Or maybe just acknowledgement of a situation that had spiraled far beyond anyone's control. Captain Torin, Draven said. His voice carried the weight of official duty. I'm here to escort you home. Sir, Callan came to attention. I received Earth Command's orders. And yet you're still here. I sent a status update. Did you receive it? I received a report about an assassination attempt conspiracy involving Senator Voss, and some extremely dense medical data about neural synchronization that our science division is still trying to parse. That's the short version. Draven's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested he was recalculating. Senator Voss moved up the extraction timeline. He convinced the Defense Council you'd been compromised, that this... He gestured at the space between Callan and Seraphine, is evidence of alien manipulation. It's neural synchronization, biological adaptation. The medical data proves... I've read the medical data, Captain. I've also read the reports about Counselor Vexron's confession, about Voss's alleged involvement in arms trafficking and conspiracy to commit murder. Draven stepped closer. I'm here to bring you home. What you do with that opportunity is your choice. The words hung in the hangar like smoke. Callan felt Seraphine's presence through the bond, felt her understanding that this moment would define everything that came after, felt her willingness to let him go if that's what he chose. That willingness hurt more than the plasma burn. I'm not going, Callan said. Draven's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. You understand what that means. Court-martial, dishonorable discharge, possibly treason charges if Voss pushes hard enough, and you're willing to accept those consequences. Callan looked at Seraphine, at the woman who'd shared her loneliness through a neural connection neither of them had chosen, at the queen who'd protected him with bioelectric shielding when plasma fire should have killed him, at the person who'd become the most important thing in his life somewhere between reactor cores and throne rooms. I'm willing to do what's right, he said. This alliance matters. This bond matters. Not because of politics, because it's proof that two species can become stronger together than they ever were apart. That's idealistic. That's human. We specialize in impossible idealism. Draven almost smiled. I'm not here to start a firefight in an alien palace, Captain. But you need to understand something. Voss has support, powerful support. People who believe humanity should remain genetically pure. Who see integration with alien species as existential threat. They're wrong. Probably. But they're also numerous. And if you refuse extraction, they'll use you as a symbol. Proof that aliens corrupt human judgment. They'll destroy the Alliance to destroy you. Through the bond, Callan felt Seraphine calculating options, her tactical mind running scenarios. Then we give them proof they can't ignore, Callan said. We show them what this bond can do, what this alliance means in practical terms. And how do you propose? The palace's alarm system activated. Not sound. Light. The walls erupted with crimson warning patterns, the kind reserved for existential threats. Draven's comm chimed. He answered, listened. His face went pale. What? Callan asked. Krell Empire fleet just dropped out of FTL. 23 warships. They're targeting both the Velshara capital and Earth's defensive perimeter simultaneously. The hangar seemed to tilt. That's impossible, Seraphine said. The Krell don't have the tactical intelligence to coordinate a strike like that. They'd need detailed information about both our defensive capabilities and Earth's military positioning. They'd need someone to give it to them, Callan said, understanding crystallizing. Voss, he didn't just fund Vexron's coup. He's been feeding the Krell strategic data. Vexron provided Velshara defensive protocols. Voss supplied Earth's military intelligence. Together they set up both civilizations for mutual destruction. Why, Draven asked. Because if both civilizations are devastated, the Alliance dies. Voss's faction sweeps into power. Humanity retreats behind its own borders. Velshara becomes vulnerable to Krell occupation. Callan's mind raced. He's not trying to preserve humanity, he's trying to control it. The alarms intensified. More data streams flooding palace systems. The Krell attack was massive, coordinated, designed to overwhelm defenses through sheer numerical superiority. Seraphine's hand found Callan's. The bond strengthened to full intensity. Our fleets are separate, she said. Velshara ships use bioorganic coordination. Earth vessels rely on electronic systems. We cannot integrate our defensive response quickly enough. Yes, we can. Callan looked at her, at Draven, at the impossible situation that had just become their only chance for survival. The neural link, we use it to coordinate both fleets. I know Earth's tactical doctrine. You know Velshara's adaptive strategies. Together we can create a unified response. That's never been done. Neither has a human Velshara neural bond. We're breaking new ground every day. Draven's comm chimed again. The Krell fleet will be in firing range in 40 minutes. Earth Command is requesting immediate defensive coordination with Velshara forces. Then we give it to them. Callan turned to Seraphine. Your flagship. Can we coordinate from there? Yes, but Captain Torrin, you realize what you're proposing. If we fail, billions die. If we succeed, we prove the alliance works. That integration makes us stronger. He squeezed her hand, felt the bond pulse with shared determination. I didn't stay here to watch everything burn. I stayed to build something worth protecting. Her ears swept forward. Decision made. Commander Draven, she said, her voice carrying royal authority that made the soldiers at the threshold straighten. I am commandeering you and your team as liaison officers. You will accompany us to the flagship and serve as communication bridge to Earth Command. Draven looked at Callan. This is insane. Probably, but it's also our best shot. The Defense Council will have my head, only if we survive long enough for politics to matter. Draven laughed, bitter, short. All right, Captain, let's save 2 civilizations. How hard can it be? The flagship Harmony of Intent hung in orbit like a living sculpture. 3 kilometers of bioorganic architecture shaped by Velshara engineering over centuries. Its hull pulsed with the same violet luminescence as the palace. Weapon systems grown rather than built. Shield generators that breathed. The command chamber occupied the heart of the vessel, walls that responded to thought. Crew stations integrated directly into the ship's nervous system, and at the center 2 raised platforms for neural command interface. Callan stood on one, Seraphine on the other. Between them, holographic displays showed the tactical situation in brutal clarity. Chun 23 Krell warships approaching from multiple vectors, Velshara defense fleet scrambling to intercept, Earth's perimeter forces mobilizing but out of position. The Krell had planned this perfectly, hit both allies simultaneously, overwhelmed before coordination could happen. Except they hadn't counted on the bond. Callan's hands moved through tactical interfaces, Earth's military doctrine flowing through his awareness, strike patterns, defensive formations, the calculated aggression that humanity had perfected over centuries of conflict. Seraphine's awareness merged with his, her people's adaptive strategies, predictive modeling, the ability to sense combat flow before it crystallized into action. Together they saw the battlefield as it truly was, not chaos, pattern. Velshara 3rd Squadron. Seraphine said, her voice carried through the ship's bioorganic communication network. Vector 43 by 17. Engage Krell Vanguard with Disruption Field Alpha. Earth Defense Wing 7. Callan transmitted through Draven's secure channel. Break formation. Scatter pattern delta. Force Krell elements into killbox coordinates I'm sending now. The bond carried information faster than words. Callan felt Seraphine's precognitive awareness map the next 30 seconds of combat. Saw where Krell ships would maneuver. Knew where to position Earth's heavy destroyers to maximize damage. Seraphine felt his tactical analysis. The mathematics of violence. The way to turn superior numbers into a disadvantage through positioning and timing. The first engagement happened at extreme range. Krell plasma fire lighting up the void. Velshara shields absorbing, redirecting, Earth's kinetic weapons punching through gaps in Krell formations. It was working. Krell command ship identified, one of Seraphine's officers reported. The Dreadnought at grid 779. Callan pulled up the tactical scan. The Krell flagship was massive, 4 times the size of any other vessel in their fleet. Biometal hull reinforced with stolen Velshara technology, weapon systems that could slag a planet. And in its reactor core, a fusion signature Callan recognized immediately. That's not Krell technology, he said. Those are Earth-manufactured fusion cores, military grade. Someone sold them advanced reactor designs. Voss, Seraphine said. The bond carried her fury, her understanding of betrayal's full scope. He armed our enemies with human technology. Then we used that against them. Callan's mind raced, engineering training merging with combat necessity. Earth fusion cores have a vulnerability, a feedback loop in the containment system. If we can trigger it, the reactor will cascade, but triggering it requires someone to input the override codes directly, at close range. How close? Within the reactor chamber itself. They looked at each other across the command chamber. The bond showed both of them the same calculation, the same impossible solution. Someone had to pilot a ship into that dreadnought's heart, set the fusion bomb manually, and escape before the reactor went critical. It was a suicide run. Callan had run those simulations 100 times in Defense Corps training, knew the survival probability. It was essentially 0. "I'll do it," he said. "No," Seraphine's voice carried absolute command. "You are too valuable. The Alliance needs both of us alive, but it needs the Krell threat eliminated more." He met her eyes, felt her resistance through the link, felt her fear. "You can guide me through your precognition. See the path before it happens. Together we can make this work. The probability of success is higher than the probability of defeating that dreadnought any other way." Silence fell in the command chamber, officers pretending not to listen. Draven standing nearby, understanding dawning on his face. "Captain Torrin," the commander said quietly, "what you're describing is a one-way trip." "Not necessarily. Not if I have someone watching my back, someone who can see 3 seconds into the future." Seraphine's ears swept back. Fear. Real fear. The bond flooded with it. "If you die, the resonance collapse will kill me too. You know this." "Then you better make sure I don't die." "This is not funny." "I'm not laughing." Callan crossed the distance between their platforms, took her hands. The bond intensified until it felt like they were sharing the same heartbeat. "Lara made me promise to keep living. I've kept that promise. But living doesn't mean hiding. It means doing what matters, saving people, building things worth protecting, including yourself, including us." Her eyes searched his face, looking for doubt, finding none. "Promise me you will come back," she said. "I promise I'll try." "That is insufficient." "That's human." She pulled him close, pressed her forehead to his. The gesture was Velshara intimacy, sharing breath, sharing space, sharing the certainty of connection. "If you die," she whispered, "I will find your spirit across whatever void separates our species and drag you back to finish this conversation." "Deal." The assault shuttle was small, fast, built for insertion runs where stealth mattered more than armor. Callan piloted it alone, every unnecessary gram of mass removed to maximize speed. Behind him the battle raged, Velshara and Earth forces executing the coordinated strikes he and Seraphine designed, drawing Krell elements away from the dreadnought, creating an opening. Seraphine's voice filled his helmet. "Krell point defense activating. 3 seconds, adjust vector 17 degrees port." Callan's hands moved before his brain processed the words. The shuttle banked. Plasma fire chewed through space where he'd been. "Good, now dive, 45-degree angle, emergency burn." He complied. The shuttle screamed toward the dreadnought's underside. Targeting systems locked on, missiles launched, not at him, at everything around him. The Krell's automated defenses couldn't track everything. Some got through, not all. Plasma bolts hammered his shields. Warnings screamed in multiple languages. The shuttle's armor began to fail. "Stay with me," Seraphine said. Her voice was his anchor, his certainty. 3 more seconds, then you breach." Callan armed the fusion device, a compact cylinder of humanity's most destructive technology, enough explosive yield to crack a moon, more than enough to trigger a cascade in Earth-manufactured fusion cores. "Now," Seraphine commanded. Callan fired the breaching charges. The dreadnought's hull peeled open like skin. The shuttle dove through, into corridors that ran with alien biofluid, past Krell crews scrambling to respond, straight toward the reactor core. The bond showed him the path, Seraphine's precognition illuminating turns before he reached them, her awareness guiding him through a ship he'd never seen. The reactor chamber loomed ahead, massive, pulsing with stolen Earth technology. Callan set the shuttle on autopilot collision course, grabbed the fusion device, ejected. His suit's thrusters fired, carrying him into the chamber, toward the containment controls. He had 30 seconds before the shuttle impacted. 30 seconds to input override codes and trigger the cascade. 29. 28. His fingers danced across holographic interfaces. Earth military protocols. The codes they taught every fusion engineer. The ones that could shut down a reactor safely. Or catastrophically. 20 seconds. Krell security burst into the chamber, weapons raised. 15 seconds. Seraphine's voice cut through the chaos. 12 degrees left. Duck now. Callan moved. Plasma fire missed by centimeters. His training kicked in, Defense Corps hand to hand. He couldn't win, but he could delay. 10 seconds. The override sequence completed. The reactor began to destabilize. Alarms everywhere. The Krell understood, scrambled to abort, too late. 5 seconds. "Jump," Seraphine said. Not a suggestion. Command. Absolute certainty. "Blast door. 3 meters right. Go." Callan ran. Dove. Felt the bond guide his trajectory. Through a door that was already closing. Into an escape corridor. The shuttle behind him impacted the reactor core. Everything became light. The explosion tore through the dreadnought like fire through paper. Fusion reaction cascading. Earth technology destroying itself. The massive warship shuddered, broke apart. And somewhere in the chaos, a small figure in a suit tumbled through void. "I have you," Seraphine's voice said. "Adjusting your trajectory. There." Callan felt something grab him. Bioorganic tendrils from a Velshara rescue craft. They pulled him in, gentle despite their strength. The airlock cycled. He was alive. The bond carried Seraphine's relief, her joy, her fury at him for taking the risk. "Told you I'd try," he transmitted. "You are impossible. I'm effective. There's a difference." The battle was turning. Without their command ship, the Krell fleet lost cohesion. Earth and Velshara forces pressed the advantage. Coordinated strikes, perfect timing. Within 20 minutes, the remaining Krell vessels began retreat. Victory! But Callan barely noticed. He was focused on the bond, on the presence that had guided him through fire, on the certainty that he'd made the right choice. All of them. The United Earth Assembly Chamber looked different through holographic projection. Callan stood in the Velshara Palace, but his image appeared before Earth's governing body. Real-time communication across light years. Technology that made politics unavoidable. Senator Arcturus Voss sat in chains, his conspiracy exposed, his communication with the Krell documented, his arms dealing proven beyond doubt. The evidence had come from Krell databases recovered after the battle. From Vexren's confession, from financial records that painted a damning picture. Ironclad, undeniable. "Captain Torin," the assembly speaker said, "in light of recent events, the charges against you have been dropped. Moreover, the Defense Council wishes to extend official apologies for doubting your integrity." "With respect," Callan said, "I don't want apologies, I want authorization." "For what?" "The bilateral ambassador protocol. Formal recognition of neural bonding between species. Rotation schedule between Earth and Velshara for myself and any other bonded pairs who emerge. Official diplomatic status protected by both governments." Silence filled the chamber, Earth's politicians processing the implications. "You're asking us to legitimize alien integration at a biological level," one senator said. "I'm asking you to recognize that evolution doesn't care about politics. This bond saved billions of lives. It proved that cooperation works. Pretending it doesn't exist won't make it go away. And if other bonds form, we need framework, protocol, protection." The speaker leaned forward. "And if we refuse, then I resign my commission and stay on Velshara as a private citizen. The alliance continues, the research continues. You just lose any official oversight." "Ballsy move." Callan felt Seraphine's approval through the bond. She stood beside him in the palace watching the proceedings. The assembly voted. It took 3 hours. Arguments, counter-arguments, political maneuvering that would have been fascinating if Callan wasn't the subject of it. But when the count finished, the protocol passed. Narrow margin, but passed. Callan felt something release in his chest, tension he'd carried for weeks, maybe years. "Congratulations, Ambassador Torin," the speaker said. "Try not to start any more wars." "I'll do my best, sir." The connection closed. Callan turned to Seraphine, found her ears lifted. The closest her species came to smiling. "You gambled," she said. "I calculated." "You're learning." 6 months later, a research station hung in the space between worlds. Neutral territory. Joint construction. The physical manifestation of an alliance that had become friendship. The observation deck wrapped around the station's exterior in a transparent dome. Earth visible on one side, Velshara on the other. Between them, the void that wasn't empty anymore. Filled with ships, cargo transports, cultural exchanges, the busy traffic of two civilizations learning to share space. Callan stood at the viewport watching 6 couples undergo neural synchronization training. 3 human Velshara pairs, 2 human Krell pairs. Even the former enemies had sent volunteers. The battle had changed calculations. War was expensive. Cooperation was profitable. The Krell ambassador had sent another message that morning. They wanted Callan and Seraphine to mediate their formal peace negotiations. Called them the bridge exemplars. Proof that former enemies could become allies. 6 months ago, Callan had been a disgraced engineer facing court-martial. Now he was a peace symbol. Life was strange. Seraphine joined him at the viewport. Her presence familiar now. Welcome. The bond between them had matured into something stable. Not intrusive, not overwhelming, just there, like breathing. They'd created something unprecedented. A neural bridge that preserved individual identity while allowing genuine connection. Other bonded pairs were learning the same technique, building their own bridges. The Krell ambassador sent another message, Seraphine said. "Let me guess, they want us to mediate. They specifically requested the bridge exemplars." Callan laughed. 6 months ago, I was running from an extraction team. Now I'm mediating peace talks. Life is absurd. Life is what you make it. They watched the volunteers work, watched neural links form, watched impossible connections become reality. Each bond unique. Each pair finding their own way to bridge the gap between species. "Do you ever regret it?" Seraphine asked. "The choice you made?" Callan thought about Earth, about the life he'd left behind, about standing at Lyra's grave and promising to live. He thought about reactor cores and throne rooms and shuttle rides through enemy fire, about assassination attempts and political conspiracies, and the moment he decided that connection mattered more than comfort. He thought about loneliness that looked different across species but felt the same. No, he said, I don't regret it. I found what I was looking for. What was that? Purpose, connection, a reason to wake up that isn't just survival. Seraphine's hand slipped into his. The bond hummed, steady, strong, alive. Then we built something worth the cost, she said. We built a bridge. They stood together in the observation deck, watching humans and aliens learn what they discovered. That connection transcends biology. That cooperation beats isolation. That two halves can become something greater than either imagined. Commander Draven approached from the corridor, still in uniform, still military, but something had changed. He'd requested assignment to the research station. He wanted to study the bonding process, understand it. Ambassador, he said. The title still felt strange. The first Earth-Krell bonded pair just completed their initial synchronization, successful integration. How are they handling it? About as well as you did. Lots of swearing, some existential crisis, but they're adapting. Callan smiled. Sounds about right. Draven looked out the viewport, at the ships moving between worlds, at the volunteers learning to build bridges in their minds. You know what the really remarkable thing is? What? 6 months ago this seemed impossible, now it's Tuesday. That's how evolution works, one impossible Tuesday at a time. Draven nodded, headed back to the training chambers, leaving Callan and Seraphine alone with the stars. He's right, Seraphine said. This has become normal, expected, Tuesday. Is that a bad thing? No, it's progress. Her ears tilted forward, curiosity. What do you think comes next? Callan looked at the stars, infinite, waiting. Full of species they hadn't met yet, connections they hadn't made, bridges they hadn't built. More Tuesdays, he said. More impossible things becoming normal. More people finding what we found. And what is that? He turned to face her. This woman who'd changed everything. Who'd shown him that loneliness wasn't permanent. That connection was possible. That bridges could span any distance if you were willing to build them. Each other, he said simply. Seraphine's hand squeezed his. The bond carried everything words couldn't. Gratitude. Affection. The certainty of partnership built on choice rather than obligation. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the universe spin around them. Two people from different worlds who'd become proof that the gap between species wasn't as wide as anyone thought. As long as someone was willing to build the bridge. Callan thought about Lyra one more time, sent a thought toward wherever she was. Thank you for making me promise. Thank you for pushing me to live. I kept my word, I'm living, finally, truly free. The stars glowed beyond the viewport, infinite, waiting. And somewhere between Earth and Velshar, between duty and devotion, between what was and what could be, Callan Toranon understood that the best promises were the ones you kept by breaking all the rules. He'd come to Velshar as an engineer, a diplomat, a man trying to honor a dead woman's final wish. He'd stayed as something more, a bridge builder, a proof of concept, a living demonstration that evolution happens when you're brave enough to let it. The research station hummed around them, alive with purpose, with connection, with the sound of impossible becoming routine. And in the observation deck, two people who shouldn't have worked stood hand in hand watching the universe expand around them. Not alone anymore. Not trapped. Just connected. And that made all the difference.